Morning, everybody. I'm Steve Lentini, and I'm the author of You Missed God on the Way to the Mosque, the Temple, or the Church, and How to See God Everywhere. And so this is chapter 3. I'm reading it with commentary, so you don't have to go to Audible or buy the book, because that's not my goal. My goal is to challenge small minded thinking. I got the trademark for the acorn brain, the small minded thinker that didn't go with me, by the way, when I died. I'm the guy that died and lived to tell about it on November 18th, 2002, after going in the hospital on the 13th, 5 days earlier. But anyway, if you've been following this, you know part of that. So I'm going to share the book each week, chapter 3 till we get to the end, and I'm going to share my own reflections and added commentary. And if you do put a question in the chat, I'll try to catch it and answer it. I won't be typing answers, by the way. I'll give you an answer. So here's chapter 3: Deconstruction, in parentheses, religion, belief, sin, and authority. Every human being inherits a world view before they ever choose one. Beliefs arrive early through family, culture, language, fear, and the desire to belong. Long before we ask our first real question, answers are already in place. And it's funny, this acorn brain, people have such rigid beliefs, especially today. We can see so many examples of it, whether it's politics or religion or anything, right? We have ideas about our bosses and leaders. Teams seem to think they can run the company better, the department better. It's just a rigid belief. I call it a belief system that we don't challenge. So it's everywhere. It's not just faith. And faith is a good thing, by the way. So long before we ask ourselves our first real question, answers are already in place. Most people spend their lives defending their answers and those answers without ever examining where they came from. Religion, like any system of meaning, begins as an attempt to explain mystery. That's the fun part. Over time, explanations harden into doctrine. Doctrine hardens into rules, and rules harden into authority. And authority, once unquestioned, becomes indistinguishable from truth. It's not a moral failure, it's a human pattern. It's human. We like to defend the positions that we get into. In his book, Mind Magic, Dr. James Doty talks about the subconscious. He says, think about it this way. The file system and a bloodhound, and whatever you put in the file system, the bloodhound goes looking for evidence of, despite any evidence to the contrary. And that's where we see such hardened positions that people still cling to today, making others wrong because they don't follow the same path. Nothing small-minded comes from the creator of a universe. Limitation is not what the creator is about. In my experience, by the way, I'm just sharing this, that when I passed from this existence in a body to the next, I call it what's next, there was none of what this little thinker, by the way, none of that small-minded little voice, and none of what I believed went with me. It was beyond my comprehension, and a gift, because that's the work I'm doing today. So belief is not the same as truth. Offense. I'm going to tell you the parable about a fence. A village built a fence generations ago. No one remembered why, only that it was important not to cross it. Children were warned, travelers were redirected, stories were told about what might happen if someone stepped beyond it. Most people never questioned the fence. They simply passed the warning along. One day, a woman repairing the fence noticed something strange. There was nothing on the other side. No danger, no cliff, no threat, just open ground. She realized the fence had not been built to protect the land, but to mark where people once stopped understanding. The fence remained not because it was needed, but because no one had checked it. Belief works the same way, by the way. They are often inherited solutions to problems that no longer exist. Belief is psychological. Truth is experimental and experiential, by the way. We have to experiment to break through old, small minded beliefs. We believe God hasn't modernized, that humans have modernized. And we believe that there's a place in hell where God would cast his children. Would you cast any of your children, or which one of them would you cast into the flames of hell for eternity because they made a mistake? When I ask people that, by the way, they all say resoundingly, "Oh, I could never do that." It's abhorrent to them, which means their love is greater than God's, the creator of this experience. Just didn't happen in my experience, by the way. So belief requires reinforcement. Truth requires nothing. Most people confuse belief with knowing, but believing something does not make it real. It only makes it familiar. We get stuck at the fence. Familiar ideas feel safe. Safe ideas get protected, and protected ideas resist examination even when they no longer serve life. Now belief quietly becomes a prison. Belief becomes a prison quietly. And we build it. We build the prison by following things blindly. Never follow anyone or anything blindly. Otherwise, you drink the Kool-Aid. So not because belief is wrong, but because it replaces direct experience with secondhand certainty. So you're following something because others told you to. And it feels good to the little thinker in the brain. This little brain loves comfort. It loves following things. It doesn't love discomfort. It doesn't love challenging things. The prophets didn't stop coming to over 2,000 years ago or 1,500 years ago. They're with us today. And it's the beliefs that get challenged, which is what the prophets have done all through history. Now, I'm not putting myself in the group of prophets, but I am challenging beliefs. A belief about God is not God. A belief about love is not love. A belief about truth is not truth. They're maps, not territory. And the danger of mistaking the map for the terrain is that eventually reality stops fitting, and we blame reality instead of the map. You want me to read that again? A belief about God is not God. A belief about love is not love. A belief about truth is not truth. They are maps, not territory. And the danger of mistaking the map for the terrain is that eventually reality stops fitting, and we blame reality instead of the map. I mean, there were maps thousands of years ago. What if we never updated them? And reality certainly shocked people because they discovered things like the earth was round, the oceans, you didn't fall off the horizon. So, the invention of sin. So we're on chapter 3. I'm reading the book. You missed God on the way to the mosque, the temple, or the church. How to see God everywhere. God is not limited. We're limited. Okay. The invention of sin. Few ideas have shaped human behavior more powerfully than sin. Sin frames human nature as inherently flawed. It suggests that something essential about us is wrong, that we arrive already in debt, already separated, already in need of correction, that we arrive with sin, right? There's some versions of religion that say that. They suggest it. But consider this carefully. Who benefits from a population that believes it is fundamentally broken? A person who believes they are sinful seeks absolution. A person who seeks absolution needs authority. They need somebody to give you absolution. A person who needs authority surrenders autonomy. Sin is a concept. Sin is a concept. It's extraordinarily effective at creating compliance. People go searching for absolution and authority, someone to bless them. Your sins are forgiven. Okay. You made mistakes. Get on with your life. And God isn't recording sin. In my experience, there was no mention of my sin in my life review, only the good I had done, only the lives I had touched. Think about that. How do you feel when you do good? Yeah, there's a reason. There might be a reason. So it doesn't mean that morality disappears without the idea of sin, quite the opposite. When fear disappears, conscience becomes clearer. Mistakes are no longer crimes against God. They become information, feedback, course correction, the way learning has always worked. Children do not need condemnation to grow. They need guidance and patience and space to fall. And so do all of God's children. They need space to fall and get up and learn. Why would spiritual maturity require less compassion than human development? If awareness expands through experience, the error is not evil, it's inevitable. Growth without missteps is fantasy. What if sin was never meant to define us, but to describe moments of misalignment later turned into identity? Authority and the fear of independent thought. Authority becomes dangerous when it claims exclusivity. The moment someone says, this is the only way, this is the final truth, questioning this is dangerous. Thinking has been replaced with submission. History shows this pattern repeatedly, not just in religion, but also in politics, ideology, and culture. The details change, the structure does not. A centralized authority claims certainty. Followers trade uncertainty for safety. Critical thinking becomes rebellion, and awareness narrows. Is this how truth behaves? Without challenge? Yes. Come on. Who will challenge small-minded thinking that's all around us? Mindlessly following anyone or any dogma throughout history has led to many documented calamities. We were murdering people for different religions for eons, and that still exists today in some countries. How small-minded. Mindlessly following anyone or any dogma throughout history has led to many documented calamities. What drove those leaders and their followers? The truth is not questioned, but their lies inflame small minds who follow because they cannot see beyond their egocentric thoughts. They can't see beyond it. Imagine a God that couldn't see beyond small-minded thoughts. How would a universe be created that we can't comprehend? Truth invites scrutiny. Truth survives questioning. Truth does not require defense. If an idea collapses when examined, it was never true. It was an agreement. We have a lot of that today, a lot of agreements. The brain itself becomes relevant. Each of us carries a primitive survival mechanism, what I call the acorn brain. That's what I trademarked. Its role is not truth, wisdom, or expansion. Its role is safety. The acorn brain resists uncertainty, questions authority, and prefers familiar explanations over direct experience. That's why people follow religious leaders without question and religious systems without question. And I'm not saying faith is bad. It's just that God is everywhere. There's no place God is absent in a universe. We're floating on a ball. You want to remember that? I show people this, right? And this is for me too to remember. Here's a marble painted, the globe painted on a marble, to remind us that we are so tiny in this universe and that we're living in a miracle. We live in a miracle, but we forget. When belief systems threaten to dissolve, this part of the brain reacts with fear, this acorn brain, defensiveness or obedience or even anger because others don't agree with our faith or whatever it is, our politics, right? Our movies, who knows, right? People love it. The brain loves to disagree. And it's not because something's wrong, but because the nervous system interprets uncertainty as danger. That's why faith became very popular. Religion, we blindlessly follow all kinds of religious leaders because the brain interprets uncertainty as danger. Don't question. Come on. Understanding understanding this changes the conversation. Questioning belief is not rebellion. It is neurological maturation. Moving beyond inherited authority is not reckless. It is the natural progression from survival-based thinking to conscious awareness. Evolution, our DNA is the only time that the past is present. It's the only time. It's carried up forward. Certain traits you have from your ancestors. Our ancestors needed to be aware of many negative factors in their environment, such as poisonous snakes, carnivorous predators, or other inhabitants that attacked. Today, we have remnants of that thinking, and we're nowhere near the danger. We don't have to worry about being attacked by a saber-toothed tiger on the way to the supermarket or by a pterodactyl swooping down in the parking lot. We have more reason to fear our leaders, whether in religion or politics or on the job, who want authority over our belief systems, or BS, as I call it. The idea that life is for us, that God is in the now, does not mean we need to exclude all religious leaders. It means remembering not to elevate them beyond what your life is showing you. That is where God is in my experience. Right? I passed from this existence, from this body to what's next. And there was no mention of my sin in my life review. Only the lives I had touched, only the good I had done. So God does not require intermediaries. One of the quiet assumptions embedded in organized religion is that access to God is granted and approved through leaders, texts, rituals, or institutions. Think about how small-minded that is. You can stay stuck in the past. By the way, I'm reading the book, chapter 3 now, this week. You missed God on the way to the mosque, the temple, or the church, and How to See God Everywhere is the subtitle. So I'm reading chapter 3. One of the quiet assumptions embedded in organized religion is that access to God is granted, right? I read that. I want to read it again. And approved through leaders, text, rituals, or institutions. Really? Your approval awaits your thought only that you are loved. And by the way, when I left this body, the first thing I felt was I was one with everything and nothing, and the most loved, unconditional loved. But there was no past or future. There was only the now. So that's what gave me the thought, once back in my body, that I had missed God everywhere because God was in the now, including the moments that bothered me, because they were there to wake me up. They were there as gifts and guidance from God, like a parent with a child. They were gifts. There was no past or future. Just something to think about. It's my experience. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. What I want people to do is expand their small-minded thinking into matching limitless thinking, this thing we live in that we don't comprehend called a universe. So the idea of intermediaries, right? But if God is truly infinite, omnipresent, and immediate, what could stand between God and direct experience? The idea of intermediaries only makes sense if God is distant. You don't need an intermediary. I mean, faith is wonderful. And your faith communities do amazing things all around the world. Feed people, shelter people, help people that are abused. Missionaries go to other countries and create clean water systems and sanitary systems and give surgeries in health systems that are far behind, right? They help modernize them. But our ideas about God haven't modernized. We think God is still stuck in the 2000s, that only humans have advanced, not God. God wants us to wake up and advance our beliefs and our ideas about God, to bring them into the future. You don't need an intermediary. So if God is present right now, then the role of authority is not to grant access, but to point away from itself. That's what religious leaders need to think about is if it's small-minded, if it's coming from the acorn brain, it doesn't come from God, the creator of a universe. And it's time for us to modernize. God didn't stop sending prophets and people who give us uncomfortable messages. The message that Christ delivered 2,000 years ago made everyone uncomfortable. Why would that stop if it comes from God? When authority becomes the destination rather than the signpost, something's gone wrong. A signpost does not invalidate community, tradition, or teaching. It simply restores it to its proper place. Support, not control. That's the place where religious leaders need to step up and grow. So deconstruction is not destruction. So this chapter is called Deconstruction, but it's not about tearing things down for the sake of rebellion. What I write about is my experience where there was no sin mentioned and God was omnipresent in the moment, only the now, no past, no future, and only the good I had done was flashed before me in my life review, all the lives I had touched. And how do you feel when you do good? That's what I ask people. And they all say, except for one guy who said, I guess I feel good. They all say they feel good when they do good. There's a reason. And mistakes are not sins. Mistakes are where we learn and grow. Did you learn to walk without falling? Did you learn to walk without falling? And if you don't remember, did your children learn to walk without falling? And if you don't have children, did your neighbor's children or your nieces and nephews learn to walk without falling? That's life. We're going to make mistakes. So this chapter in this book is not about tearing things down for the sake of rebellion. It's about removing what no longer holds truth so that what remains can breathe. In the process of asking, does this belief expand life or restrict it? Right? Small-minded thinking restricts life because we want to kill people because they believe differently. Or we want their land or whatever it is. It's small-minded. It doesn't come from God. And then when we have troubles in our life, we think God abandoned us. We have to go searching for God. God is in the now. In my experience, I'm not trying to prove anything to you. Prove it to yourself. Be in the moment. Embrace everything that shows up in your life and decide life is for you, not happening to you. Does this idea invite awareness or suppress it? Does this authority encourage responsibility or replace it? Deconstruction does not leave emptiness, and clarity does not need to be defended. What remains when structures fall? When belief loosens? When sin loses its grip? When authority steps aside? What remains is not chaos. What remains is presence, the now. An inner compass that does not shout, a conscience that does not threaten, a sense of alignment that feels unmistakably right, not because it was taught or approved of, because it resonates. Experience and experiment yourself with the now, being present, even and especially with the moments that bother you and the people that bother you. It's turned out, for me, they've been my greatest gift. It was God knocking on my door, entering my life to correct it. Course correction, like a parent. You do not need permission to notice what's true in your own experience. You never did. The question is not about whether religion, belief, sin, or authority are right or wrong. The real question is simpler and far more unsettling. Where have you outsourced your knowing? Because it's lazy. You just decide, I'm going to follow this. It's easy. We're followers. That's what humans are. That's why 400 people drank the Kool-Aid and followed Jim Jones to South Africa and all committed suicide. And others have. Look up the sneaker cult. Amazing. It was 44 very smart people among them that committed suicide, believing the mothership was coming to take them from this planet to the infinite planet where God resided. So where have you outsourced your knowing and what becomes possible when you take it back? That's what Chapter 4 next week. You just heard Chapter 3 with my commentary. You missed God on the way to the mosque, the temple, or the church. How to see God everywhere based on my near-death experience and actually dying and being on the other side, flatlining. with two friends at the end of my bed. So the question is, are you going to follow blindly or recognize God in everything that shows up, that you don't have to be doing anything to earn God's love? God's not transactional in my experience. Only the good that I had done and the lives I had touched flashed before me in my life review. But you got to prove that to yourself. Be with whatever shows up, especially the difficult and challenging moments and people, because that's God guiding you. And if you all got a peek, by the way, you would not be so petty. If you got a peek at what's next, like I did, you would stop this listening to this brain that I call the acorn brain. That was the gift from God, right? Teaching that. And the challenging ideas are what people do all throughout history. And it started with the prophets like Jesus or Moses or Muhammad. All the prophets and people that have changed society came with ideas that shook up the moment. So if this shakes up your moment, fine. I'm not claiming to be a prophet, but I did experience the other side. I experienced God, the infinite, and it was amazing, way beyond my comprehension. And I'm sharing it, not trying to convince anybody of anything. You prove it to yourself. God is with you and never absent. All right, you can email me. You could send me questions on the chat next week. I'll read it. It'll be Friday. I'm the author. You missed God on the way to the mosque, the temple, or the church. How to see God everywhere. If you want the book, it's on Audible. But if you're patient, I'm reading every chapter. You can email me, Steve. Just add Steve in front of this. Steve at Steve Lentini. I got to go the opposite way. .com. Steve at SteveLentini.com. I'm glad to help. Thank you.